2020 has been... well, it has been. For a lot of us, it's been a bit of a lonely experience, and with worldwide lockdowns interrupting our normal lives, we've been forced to stay at home, munch snacks in our undies, and play video games. With the festive season set to be more of the same, you may be considering dusting off that old box of 100 assorted Christmas cards and spending an afternoon penning greetings to your most cherished companions. But not everyone is as deserving of your penmanship as others, and since we've spent more time with video game companions than real-life ones this piss mushroom of a year, we're taking a look back to weed out the characters who are definitely on our naughty lists and will not be getting a Christmas card this year. Take that, Polygon people. Fair warning, we will be covering a few plot points from games released in the last 12 months. We'll try to keep them fairly superficial, but a spoiler warning is in full effect. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and here are 10 gaming characters that are off our 2020 Christmas card list. Number 10. Abby, The Last of Us Part 2. Before you all take to the comments to decry this entry, let me ask you this. Would you send a Christmas card to someone who had bitten your fingers off? What's that? You're struggling to write anyone a Christmas card because someone bit your fingers off? Yeah, that's what I thought. The long-awaited sequel to The Last of Us Part 2 landed in June 2020 and garnered widespread praise for building beautifully upon the narrative and characters of the series' first entry, as well as introducing brand new characters to both fall in love with and hate. But Ben, I hear you cry, I still have my one good hand, and though my writing isn't as neat as it once was, I can certainly manage. Alright then, but what about the fact that Abby also has a particularly horrifying murder on her conscience? If you know the one we're talking about, you'll certainly agree we can't quite so easily forgive that one now, can we? We know Elliot is no saint either, partaking in a bit of torture here and there, but who hasn't? And ultimately, obsessing over revenge, but, and forgive us for fixating on this, we just can't get past the whole noshing on our digits thing. For that reason, Abby can consider herself stricken from our Christmas card list. You know, once our motor functions come back. Number 9. The G-Man, Half-Life Alyx. We simply do not have any time for anyone who messes with Alyx Vance, who is, in our writer's opinion at least, nothing less than the finest video game companion who has ever existed, and a pretty great protagonist to boot. The evil G-Man reared his suited and booted head once again in 2020's Half-Life Alyx, a long-awaited follow-up to Half-Life 2. Although the game wasn't the sequel that most Half-Life fans had been hoping for, don't you worry, Valve, you take all the time you need with Half-Life 3. We'll wait. It certainly was a worthy entry in the franchise. Set 5 years prior to the events of Half-Life 2, the story follows Alyx Vance as she attempts to steal a mysterious superweapon from the Combine and save her father from an untimely death. Enter the G-Man, who dupes Alyx into thinking he's Gordon Freeman and springing him from jail. Admittedly, the G-Man does offer Alyx the opportunity to save her dad's life, which is sort of nice if you forget about the fact that he's only doing it as a test to prove she's a worthy replacement for Freeman, but that doesn't make up for all the crappy stuff that he's done to her throughout the series, so no card for him this year. Maybe if he makes his New Year's resolution to better himself and do some charity work, he might get one next year. Possibly. Probably not though. Number 8. SEPHIROTH, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Oh, SEPHIROTH, you were a naughty boy back in 1997 and you're still a naughty boy in 2020. Of course, we didn't really expect anything else, and whilst 23 years can change a person, in this case, it most definitely hasn't. The first in a planned series of games aiming to fully overhaul Final Fantasy VII, the remake once again follows our hero Cloud Strife as he and pals attempt to stop the evil Shinra Corporation and bring down the slightly unhinged Sephiroth as he plans his ascension to godlike status. If he's not kicking Cloud's arse into a comatose state, Sephiroth can most likely be found doing murders with that silly katana of his, compensating for anything there, chap. So we can't help but feel that, this year at least, he's not worthy of our seasonal greetings. Knowing what the rest of the plot of Final Fantasy VII has in store doesn't fill us with much hope for future years either, but hey, you never know. Maybe he'll ditch the ridiculously big sword, get a haircut, and find himself a respectable office job, and the internet will accept all of these changes without comment. Number 7. Khan Maykr, Doom Eternal.
Khan!
Whoops. No, wrong franchise. Here we have Khan Maykr, no relation, supreme ruler of Urdak, leader of the Makers, and, oh my, a hottie to boot. We can't imagine that Santa is looking too favourably upon Miss Maykr this year, what with the whole orchestrating Hell's invasion of Earth thing, and frankly, we're none too pleased with her either. Doom Eternal landed in March 2020, so gamers who were sick and tired of watching the world burn around them could boot up their platform of choice and do the exact same thing in video game form. Players step once again into the heavily armoured shoes of Doom Guy to thwart Khan Maykr's plans and prevent the destruction of the world at the hands of thousands of demonic forces. We don't like to write people off as pure evil here at TripleJump, but if your primary motivation is the harvesting of humanity for the purposes of energy production, you're pretty high up on the scale, aren't you? Somewhere above Vlad the Impaler and Pol Pot, but slightly below people who microwave fish in the office. Number 6. Dr. Neo Cortex, Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. Released in October 2020 to a pretty favourable response from both critics and players alike, Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time follows on from the Insane trilogy, and we once again join our favourite marsupial as he attempts to prevent Doctors Neo Cortex and Nefarious Tropy from enslaving the multiverse. There was some debate over at TripleJump Towers as to which of the aforementioned PhD recipients should appear on this list, and whilst the latter is definitely a contender, especially after betraying his colleague, we can't just discount all of the mischief that Cortex has gotten up to over the years, as well as the fact that he seems to have no intention of changing his dastardly ways. Not to mention the fact that despite initially teaming up with Crash and the boys, no, not that Crash and the boys, he goes on to kidnap Kupana Wa and attempt to prevent Crash's creation. Not cool, man. Not cool. Overall, Neo Cortex has been a very nasty fellow over the years, and his latest foray into multiverse domination proves that he's still a bad egg. He won't be getting a Christmas card, and somebody should probably revoke his medical license. Number 5. Nemesis, Resident Evil 3. You know how we said earlier in this very list, we don't like to write people off as pure evil here at TripleJump? Well, it turns out that particular hill would have been a rather silly one to die upon. Also, Resident Evil 3's Nemesis doesn't really care upon which hill you die as long as he's the one who gets to do the honours. A remake of 1999's Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, the 2020 entry in the series, follows the plot of the original, with protagonist Jill Valentine doing her darndest to stop the spread of the T-virus, all while pursued by Nemesis. Not only does Nemesis brutally kill several of Jill's comrades, but he also infects her with the T-virus, and in the year of our Lord 2020, we do not need to tell you how bloody uncool that is. Admittedly, the real evil here is the Umbrella Corporation, creators of the T-virus, and second only to EA when it comes to poor morals, corruption, and treachery. Nemesis is the embodiment of all that they stand for, and perhaps if he feels sad enough about not getting a card from Ben Potter and Tiny Peter this year, it might prompt him to change his vile ways. Maybe, you never know. Number 4. KHOTUN Khan, Ghost of Tsushima. Whoops, no, wrong franchise again. It's very rare that invaders go down in history as the good guys. Just ask Attila the Hun or Adolf Hitler, and Ghost of Tsushima's KHOTUN Khan is no exception. And yes, I understand the irony being that I am British. The leader of the Mongol fleet, this descendant of the notorious Genghis Khan, has his sights set firmly on the Japanese island of Tsushima, and it's up to protagonist Jin Sakai to put a stop to his reprehensible schemes. Seemingly one step ahead of Sakai for almost the entire game, Khan's invasion leaves a trail of bodies and devastation in its wake, so it's fair to say that he's not a particularly nice chap. In addition to this, the events that he and his motley crew put into motion lead to Jin Sakai's journey to becoming the Ghost, and despite the island's victory over the invading forces, ultimately resign him to a life on the run. Not that we need more excuses to swiftly remove this top wazzock from our Christmas card list, but besides all of the aforementioned, he's also not above attempting to poison an entire island full of people. Do forgive us if we're not super keen on keeping in touch with the Mongol equivalent of Lisa Aaron. Maybe someone will push him through the moon door. One can only hope. Number 3. KOTAL Khan, Mortal Kombat 11. No, just kidding. Number 3. The Soviet Union and the United States of America, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Aside from the fact that we don't have the time or the wrist strength to send seasonal greeting cards to 500 million people, we don't think that two countries whose war ultimately came down to my nuke is bigger than yours are deserving of so much as a lump of coal in their stockings, let alone a Christmas card. Set in the early 1980s and following on directly from 2010's Black Ops, players jump into the action as Bell, a new recruit joining an elite group of fan-favourite soldiers as they pursue Perseus, a Soviet operative that the US has been tailing for years. Admittedly, the Soviet Union are very firmly presented as the villains in this game, and they have definitely been a very naughty bunch of boys and girls. However, we history nerds at TripleJump Towers simply can't ignore the real-world events on which this game is based. I don't think it's controversial to say that there were wrong-uns on both sides, with this nuclear Wilson measuring contest resulting in the threat of devastation for the entire world. It's for this reason we're striking both nations off our list this year. Number 2. Tom Nook, Animal Crossing: New Horizons. Oh look, if it isn't the Jeff Bezos of the Animal Kingdom, sat there on his massive pile of bells, the smug git. Animal Crossing: New Horizons couldn't have landed at a better time. The global pandemic was new to all of us, the news was full of death and devastation, and people were hoarding toilet paper like they planned to spend the entirety of quarantine on the toilet. I suppose it's harder to watch the world fall apart round your ears when you're sat on the john. Luckily, this lovely, slow-paced little game came along to inject a bit of peace and calm into our lives, and we could spend our days digging up fossils, expanding our island homes, and keeping an eye on those turnip prices in the hope of retiring young with a billion bells to our names. Ruining all of that, though, is Tom Nook, the uber-capitalist thorn in everyone's side, who's always around to remind you just how much money you owe him. We're all just here for a good time, pal, and not to be reminded that someone, somewhere, is after our money. So here's your bells, you stingy sod. Maybe they'll write you a Christmas card, huh? Number 1. The Imposters: Among Us. Yeah, that's right. Every last one of you stinky imposters won't be getting a Christmas card this year, or indeed any year, from me, and you should count yourselves lucky that's as far as I'm willing to go. If I ever get the motivation for anything more than passive aggression, you'd better watch your backs. I won't know. I can't be arsed. Released in 2018 and shot to viral internet superstardom in late 2020, with everyone from PewDiePie to your mum getting in on the action, Among Us plonks up to 10 players onto a spaceship and encourages them to do their best Sherlock Holmes impression and figure out who the saboteurs are. Among them. If your skills of deduction are finely attuned, or you're just plain lucky enough to witness a murder, you can quickly eject the imposters into the vast nothingness of space. Fail to do so, and those sneaky space-suited naughty boys and/or girls and/or others will bring about your unceremonious demise. We appreciate that without the imposters to spice things up, Among Us would effectively boil down to go over here, do this thing, go over there, do that thing, yay, you've won. But we cannot overstate the unbridled rage we feel after being offed so close to the finish line, or even worse, ejected by our idiot teammates who, despite our loud protestations, insist that we must be the imposter because we spent a bit too long stood scratching our bums earlier in the game, and that was a little bit sus. You idiots! You fools! You know what scratched this entire entry. Number 1, idiots who ejected us from the ship because we spent too long scratching our bums. That's it. That's number 1. And that's our list. Which 2020 gaming character has been hastily stricken from your Christmas card list this year? Name and shame them in the comments below. You can follow myself and TripleJump on Twitter here, and while you're at it, why not support the things you enjoy by having a look at our Patreon. Finally, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and thanks for watching.